So welcome to this talk as we dive even deeper into the fascinating world of fine art photography. In today's discussion, I want to look at the whole thing around gallery representation and how you can get your work seen in public spaces. My name is Martin Osner. I'm an artist, photographer, gallery owner, and an art curator. I've been involved in art and fine art photography for the past 25 years, and I've been practicing professional photography for over 40 years now. And as you may have noticed on my channel, I like to do videos where I discuss new artworks or artworks I've just completed. I also love to share behind the scenes stories and then to announce upcoming exhibitions and events. But as importantly, I also want to give back. I want to give back some of the joy that photography and fine art photography has given me over the many years. And I certainly understand the challenges that one faces as an emerging artist, as I've been there and I've walked that road. So if I can give anybody a helping hand to get a foot in the door by sharing some of my experiences, then that would be fantastic. But firstly, let me also just put a disclaimer in place. The advice that I'm going to offer today is purely based on my own experience. And I'm sure that there are many other ways that one could approach galleries or get into the world of exhibiting art. But what I'm going to share is based on what I know. It's all those little things that I wish I knew years ago because it would have just sped things up. Somebody one day said to me, "But Martin, what you're talking about is basically the gospel according to Martin." Well, that's pretty close to exactly what I'm talking about. So this is just my experience, and if it works for you, that's great. And if there's things you can take from it, well, that's even better. As some of you may know, a while back I used to offer similar talks and public discussions, but to a live audience. However, due to COVID, it was impossible to continue. And although I was really concerned at the time, it turned out to be a really good thing for not only my teaching, but also for continuing these public talks. As a result, I think it was, if my memory serves me correctly, around June 2020, I presented my very first webinar on the discussion of transforming photography into art. And then earlier this year, 2023, I did another webinar on the question of what is fine art photography. And then just recently, a couple of months ago, I also did a seminar around a discussion of getting into fine art photography. You can find all of these talks on my YouTube channel, and they're also accessible through our newly formed Art Photography Academy, where by registering and subscribing to the platform, you'll also gain access to these discussions. I'll just make sure that we put a link in the description below. Why am I sharing all of this with you? Why am I going through all of this background information? Well, it's because since I have been doing these talks, I've been absolutely astounded by the level of engagement and feedback. You see, during the actual talks, I made a commitment to address popular questions related to photography. Not only just photography, but then art photography and fine art photography. And I have received excellent questions and equally some really nice encouragement. I also realized with the amount of questions now coming in that there is no way I could address these questions based on the old way of scheduling webinars and seminars. It just simply takes too long. So with the help of my lovely daughter who works with me in the business, Samantha Lee, who's standing right over there making sure that not only is the coffee hot, but she's also making sure that the cameras are rolling and everything is working smoothly. So if you enjoy the content that I'm going to be discussing today and you connect with it, then please subscribe to my channel so that you will get regular notifications when these videos are posted. So as I've already said, in these sessions, my goal is to provide valuable advice on relevant topics according to my own experience. I received a number of questions around the subject of approaching galleries for representation and also how to get one's work into public space. So we're going to be starting off with this. You know, I remember when I transitioned from professional photography to fine art photography, and that was a while back. And I can remember it as if it was yesterday. And I naively thought the journey would be smooth sailing. I had this belief that the entire world was eagerly anticipating the arrival of my work. I envisaged galleries rolling out the red carpet for me, eager to showcase my work. I saw myself walking into a gallery and met with open arms, and oh my goodness, was I living in a fool's paradise. At the time, I moved over from being a commercial photographer into the world of fine art photography and exhibiting art. Despite the fact that I had established so many industry contacts through the many years that I worked in the commercial photography industry, I also naively thought that my strong contact list would support me in my new endeavors. Again, that was a complete wake-up call. And little did I know that it would firstly take about 4 years to assemble a portfolio that was suitable enough to be able to show. And here I found myself trapped between art photography and fine art photography. Interior designers and design stores were looking for less emotive work, work that was less challenging and had more of a design orientation to it. And then on the other hand, when I would presented some of these, what I thought was highly sellable prints to art galleries, it really didn't light up the silver screen. And by the time I was 6 years into what I was trying to do you know that I still hadn't sold a single artwork? And at that time, I remember wanting to just give up. However, things started to change when I finally managed to secure a spot for my work in a local gallery in Sandton, Johannesburg. And the gallerist said to me, "Martin, I'm not going to offer you an exhibition. I'm not going to feature you as a represented artist, but I like your work, and I will pick a few of your pieces which we'll put in the gallery and see what happens." Well, fortunately, that worked out, and I managed to sell a couple of prints that way. Then shortly after that, I got a major breakthrough where I was offered my first exhibition at another art gallery. Interesting enough, it turned out to actually be a former schoolmate of mine, and he offered me a show. Gordon at the time was already a fully accomplished artist. He was well respected in the industry, and he went into art straight from school. At this point, he had already opened up his own gallery, and although he specialized in sculptural installations, he was also showcasing other artists' work in different mediums. And I still wonder today if maybe I got the show just because he felt sorry for me, and he felt obligated because, we had gone to school together, and I would never know. Anyway, at that point, I thought, well, here we go. Finally, the world is going to see my work. There's that great saying that says the motivated horseman jumped on his horse and galloped off in all directions at the same time. Well, that was pretty much me. So with 3 months leading up to the show, I not only added to my current collection that I was showing, but I also published a book. And although the whole show was met with great enthusiasm and it was a wonderful experience, we only really sold a dozen books, if I can remember. And we also just sold 1 or 2 prints. So financially, it didn't make sense at all, but it was certainly a start. So that leads me on to the first question that I'd like to deal with on this talk. And this I received from Sally, who is based in the United Kingdom. And Sally asks this. She says, "How do I go about setting a price for my art?" She goes on to say, "I want to approach a few galleries in London that I think would be interested in what I do. But if they like my work, I don't know what to tell them when it comes to price." Well, Sally, first of all, it's a really good question, and I love your confidence. So let's start with this. How long is a piece of string? And the reason I'm saying this, Sally, is because when it comes to setting a price, there's no strict parameters. There's a whole lot of variables which will be probably out of your control in any case. I mean, one of those is the very gallery that then gives you the show. What status is that gallery? What sort of patrons do they attract? And what sort of work do they keep? That's already going to be one of your parameters that you're going to need to consider. And the second thing is, say a celebrity came along and asked me the same question. Well, I'd have to offer very different advice, purely because of their status, in the community. But taking this into account, let me see if I can answer your question. Before I give you a basic formula that I have given to others on this topic, firstly, I just want to say, never undersell your worth. Never ever undersell your worth. It's not good for you. It's not good for the industry. So you don't give your work away. You need to set a price that is of industry standard and fair to what you actually do. Sally, you're not setting the price for today. You're setting the price for tomorrow. And you will soon find that once you have set a price, had you gone in a little too high, it's quite easy to drop price, but it's incredibly difficult to increase the price. This reminds me of one of my new artists that I signed up early on when I opened my first gallery. His name is Sandy McLee, and I know that he's a good friend of mine, and I know that he won't mind if I tell you this, but he came in with very low pricing that he'd already established with a couple of exhibitions he had had, and a few galleries were representing his work in other cities. And it took us about 3 years to be able to get him up to where we felt it was fair for him as an artist to create his work, and then for us as a gallery to represent his work. And had he not been a friend of mine, I guess I wouldn't have walked that road with him in any case. And, just while I'm thinking of this, Sam, maybe you must get hold of Sandy. I think it will be a good idea to see if he'll come onto this forum. We can have a discussion with him. I mean, he creates those beautiful photo montages and outstanding collages. So let's get hold of him, and if he agrees, I think this could be a really nice session where we can actually talk about it from his perspective as an artist coming into this world. So if you could just put that on your to-do list, that will be great. So before we go into the basic formula, I'd like to give you, Sally, just keep in mind that galleries will take anywhere between sort of 35-40% all the way up to 60% of the sale price. So we have to factor that in as we look at what we should be selling at. So this is the way I'd like to deal with it. Sally, I want you to imagine that you are now an exhibiting artist. You got your work up in the gallery, and you get that call to say, we've got great news for you. We've managed to sell one of your pieces yesterday, and we would like your bank account details so that we could pay you. And then they also say to you, and as quickly as you can you please replace the piece that we've sold so that we can continue with the show? So my question here is, as a base point, what is that amount going to be? What is the amount that will make you feel, oh wow, that was worth all the effort, that is so exciting? Besides the whole emotional thing about having sold a piece of work, what would that amount be? And then once you have established that price, then you need to double that, because that takes into account the gallery commission. And then onto this figure, add in your production costs, your printing, your framing, and all the other costs that go around creating the artwork itself. And then you add on another 10%, and this is in case the gallery negotiates a preferred price with the client, which often happens if they're trying to close the sale or they have a really good customer that they are looking after. And then onto this, I need you to add a further 10%, and this is towards unexpected costs that could arise, and then another 10 to 20%, which you can put aside, which goes towards your marketing of your work for the future. And that becomes your base price. And the last bit of advice I'd like to give you here, Sally, is that even once you have this base price in mind, wait until the gallery agrees to show your work. And then sit down with the owner or the curator and ask them, based on their advice, what your price break should be. Don't be surprised if they give you a price that's even higher than the formula that I have given to you now. So the next question I'd like to deal with is a question that comes in from Huan. And Huan makes this statement. He says, I've not been able to get any galleries to consider my work. They simply don't even come back to me. He goes on to say, recently a local restaurant has asked me to put some of my work up on their wall. And even my doctor said that I can put some of my artwork up in his waiting room. Is this a good idea? Well, Johan, I understand the discouragement, but I still want to encourage you to continue to pursue the gallery option. And later on in this talk, I'll talk a little bit about how you should be approaching a gallery. Maybe that's going to make a bit of a difference. And the reason I say that is because the gallery is still a better option when it comes to your branding as an artist. So don't give up on that. So here are a few challenges you need to consider before you go out and just hang up work in a public space. So first of all, it's the prospective audience. What type of audience do they attract? Secondly, the lighting, and especially so in a restaurant, is generally poor. Most restaurants like to go with sort of low-key, moody lighting, which means your work is not really going to be seen or it's not going to be featured properly. And very often the interiors are also really busy, so once again your work gets lost on the wall. Keep in mind that the restaurateur in this case is actually getting quite a good deal because they're getting free decorating. And unless there's more to the arrangement, you've got to be quite careful. Although a few years ago we decided no longer to work with restaurants as a collaborative, Samantha and I do have our work up in one restaurant, but it's a destination space. It's actually a gallery combined with a dining experience. It's at the Blue Vines district in Montague, which is about 2 hours drive from Cape Town where we are based. And Richard Valers, the owner, is one of our clients. And when he proposed this arrangement, we agreed to a number of things. The first thing was the gallery lighting. And he even brought us in right from the beginning of the project while they were still building the restaurant to work with the contractors to ensure that the lighting was perfect. We also agreed that there would be price cards up because some restaurants ask you not to put up the price cards, but they will simply tell people about it. Well, that doesn't really happen. So we agreed that price cards will be up. And more importantly, that we would create art around the theme of the restaurant. So this particular space has almost like a Moroccan, quirky sort of eclectic vibe. So we specifically put up work that suited that environment. On top of that, it was also agreed that the menu would actually feature the artworks as part of the dining experience and the stories behind the artworks. And the whole Blue Vines district is clearly marked with signage that says it is a gallery. Patrons, when they come through, are given a walkthrough by either the owner himself or one of his trained staff members, so they again understand that the work that they are looking at is actually a gallery exhibition space, and it's not just a collection of work that the owner happens to have. On top of that, they've got the small thrift shop or gift shop where the people can pay for the artwork and buy it right there and then if they are interested. Now, Johan, I'm not saying that you need to do the same. Circumstances are different, but I want you to see the level of intent that it takes for your work to be seen on the wall. Funny, I also put work up in a doctor's room early on when we started one of my first galleries. It was in Cape Town, and this doctor's room is one of the best cosmetic dentistry practices in the country. So it really had a reputation and had the right type of clientele. And do you know that we just did not get any traction? And then one day I came up with this brainwave. I decided I would theme the actual display. So instead of just putting up any work like beautiful landscapes or wildlife work or things like that, I decided to put up something that would suit a doctor's room. So I took this artwork that was created by Klaus Tietke, one of our represented artists, and voila, all of a sudden there was comments, all of a sudden there were people visiting the gallery wanting to see more. So I think that's also important to consider. Unfortunately, I must also mention that Klaus is no longer with us. Tragically, he passed away a few years ago, but he's left behind this incredible legacy of not only tribal portraits, but also some of the finest wildlife art that you are going to see. Johan, my last point that I'd like to make on your question is take courage. Take courage because it takes time. You just have to stick to it. Johan, one of the highest selling artists of all time, the great Andy Warhol, the pop artist, was turned down in, I think it was around 1956 by the Museum of Modern Art. They rejected this artwork which he sent to them looking for representation, and he was informed with this letter, and I'm going to put the letter up here. They thanked him for his effort but told him he could come back and collect the artwork from the museum at his convenience. Today, this is one of the top artworks that he has ever sold. If my memory serves me correctly, I'm talking about around $100 million. Also, obviously experiencing the same frustration that you have at the moment, Andy Warhol exhibited his first collection in a shop window. It was part of a window dressing in an apartment store. And here you will also see the work of Roy Lincolnstein, one of the other very successful pop artists of the time, who also exhibited with him at the same time. So it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you do start. Isaiah asked a similar question. He asks here, what is your advice when it comes to approaching a gallery? He says, do you just walk in, or do you try to make an appointment, or do you continue to email like I've been trying to do? I find that when I email, I never get an answer. Why is this? So this is very similar to what we have just discussed in a way, except there's a little bit more to it. So Isaiah, I am going to exchange my artist hat for my curator's hat to answer this question. You must appreciate that popular galleries get many requests for representation. And if they're not being answered, it could be the following reasons. I mean, it could just be a logistics thing. Your email could be just ending up in a spam folder. Some galleries have a structured representation policy. That's what we do. So go onto the website and go and have a look and see what you need to do if you want to apply for representation. And if you follow that policy, you have more chance of getting an answer. Maybe it's a simple thing that your work is just not compatible with that gallery. You know, the birds of a feather tend to flock together. So you know, if a gallery's got a certain look, feel, or a certain genre that it actually showcases, you'll find that they will attract a certain clientele who connects with that. And if your work is too far out from that, well, they're not really going to be interested. So it could be your style, it could be your genre, it could even be the medium that you're working on. This certainly requires time to research properly before you make application. I know that many people looking for representation as an artist use the shotgun approach. So they simply just send out a whole lot of emails almost as spam, and they throw bread out in the water to see what bites. Well, I suggest that you don't do that. And based on my experience and the applications we receive, I can tell you that most of the time, the application is not specific enough. It's too general. So that is one of the reasons why we put a proper structure in place. Because prior to that, you would get this link to a share folder, and you open up the folder, and there's hundreds of photographs or artwork in there. And it's just, we don't have the time to go through it. And I know that the person making the application is hoping that we would spot one or two pieces that we like. But honestly, there's not enough time for that. So in a moment, I'll walk you through a simple procedure that's going to give you a better chance of getting representation. So when it comes to your question on whether you should just walk into a gallery or whether you should make an appointment, I think when you walk into a gallery without an appointment, you're on the back foot in any case. Personally, I don't see any potential artists without an appointment, and I don't make an appointment unless I know what I'm going to be seeing and who I'm going to be talking to. And I get really annoyed when somebody disguises themselves as a client. They come into the gallery, they'll go through the artist walk, and then while you are busy still talking about the work and showing them the work, they'll pull out their phone and say, well, have a look at the type of work that I create. And it's just annoying and unprofessional, so I wouldn't suggest you do that. Rather, if this is the approach that you want to take, rather print up a portfolio and take it to the gallery and leave it with them and ask them to show it to the owner or the curator, and then you can always go back to fetch it later. As I remember that fine art photography is very subjective. It's very personal, and it usually conveys a message or delivers an emotion. So it's important that when you present work, that the artworks you present hold together or tie together based on this. So when you're putting together a proposal for representation, it's not isolated work, and it's not a whole lot of different work. It's one specific show that you would like the gallery to consider. So it almost has to have a catalog type feel. You need to introduce the whole reason for the collection, why it's been put together, how it's been put together, where it's been put together, and when it was put together. You need to have an artist statement and an artist biography, even if it's really short, because we understand that this is the beginning of your career, but But even so, there needs to be an introduction to who you actually are as an artist. And you should also be including a self-portrait so that we know who you are. Even if it's an artistic self-portrait, it should be in the same presentation. And then remember, each artwork has to have a title and it needs to have a description. And if you are going to be editioning your artwork, then that needs to be explained. Try not to overdo it, so I wouldn't include more than 12 artworks in a presentation. And then also just a word of warning, if you have your own work up for sale on your own website, you may very well battle to get the gallery to consider showcasing you, because galleries are not going to compete against you as an artist. They are going to want some form of exclusivity. And then before you deliver the proposal to the gallery, make sure you have a few of the prints available to be viewed, preferably already framed. So when you get the call to say that we're interested in talking to you, you're already ready to show what you can do. When it comes to the whole question around pricing, which we dealt with earlier, I would simply leave that out of the proposal. That's something you could talk about should the gallery be interested in taking your work further. As I remember, for the most part, and I'm probably speaking more about myself here than anyone else, but I'm almost sure it's the same everywhere else, that we as curators who are putting together shows, and we as gallerists are delighted when the work is already done for us. It just means we've got less to do. And if you present a proper proposal, it shows us that you as an artist are focused, and we can see that you're professional, and the chances of success will be much higher. So here's a question that comes in from Anonymous. And Anonymous says, I don't like engaging with people. I'm terrified of the whole idea of walking into a gallery with my work or even talking to them over the phone. What is your advice? Well, Anonymous, it's good to know your limits. The best thing that I can suggest is to try to find somebody who will represent your work for you. And preferably this person needs to be completely up to speed when it comes to the world of art. The last question that I have time to deal with today is a very important one. The question comes in from Alice, who's out in Atlanta, Georgia. And Alice asks this. She says, besides the obvious when it comes to gallery representation, like the type of work or medium or pricing, etc., what else can I do to improve my chances of getting in? Alice, as we have just discussed with the last question, remember, the professional presentation that you put forward is going to be important. But don't forget that people buy from people. And what I mean by that is that it's not always about your art, but it's about the artist behind the artwork and the journey that you as an artist is on. So my advice to you would be to concentrate on building an audience on the popular media channels. Remember that people interested in art are of a certain age group, so you need to work on appropriate channels that speak to that sort of audience. Now, this can take years and years, but once you get this going, you'll find it will be of immense value to you. Because when you approach a gallery for representation and you have great work that you show them and you present the work really professionally, and then on top of that, you have a strong following of your work, you are giving the gallery something to leverage off. And this is certainly going to improve your chances of getting a show or getting represented by the gallery. It's funny, Alice, that I'm the one that's giving you this advice because, I'm not really that good when it comes to engaging on social media and all of that. That I leave up to Samantha to do, and I can see her giggling over there in the background. But it is important. It is really important, and we're still finding our way on trying to build and engage with an audience. So, if you have overnight success in what you do, please share that with us, and we can help one another. Well, my friends in art, that's all the time that I have available for this discussion today. Remember, if you found what we've just discussed today interesting, please subscribe to the channel. Oh yes, and remember to register and subscribe on the Art Photography Academy. Soon we'll be launching a whole community section to the site where you'll find like-minded people that enjoy photography and enjoy art, and you'll be able to get in discussions with one another. And I also just want to mention that I will be presenting fine art photography masterclasses on the platform, and the subject we discussed today will also be covered in this. Well, that's about as much as we have time for today. So I hope you found some of this information valuable. As I said to you earlier, use what you can and discard what you need to. For now, go well and stay creative. Why? Because it's just good for the soul. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you again.